Story 1. My grandma refused to visit Tropical Smoothie until she passed away because she disliked the woman who owned her local franchise. Story 2. There is a potato chip company here in New Zealand called Bluebird. There was a superior chip company called Crispa that produced the best salt and vinegar as well as chicken-flavored chips. Crispa was exceptional. Bluebird couldn't even compete. Crispa was in every child's lunchbox and at every barbecue. Bluebird was the crude yet overpriced alternative that people would choose if Crispa wasn't available. In 2005, Bluebird made the bold move of buying out Crispa from their parent company. What did they do? They just shut them down. No replacements, no rebranding under the Bluebird name. They simply bought the competition and closed it down. For 20 years, I have never bought a Bluebird product out of spite. Story 3. FedEx once claimed I was not home 3 times in a row. 2 of those times, I purposely stayed home and worked near the front door. I looked at the cameras and saw that they never even pulled up in front of my house when they marked me as not home. I now drive a farther distance to Office Depot or Staples if I need to print documents for work. I will also pay more for the United States Postal Service or United Parcel Service when given the option. I will not use FedEx again. Story 4. I once ordered from a small local shop for the kids. They both wanted grilled cheese and I ordered a salad. I placed the order and waited for the text to pick it up. About 45 minutes after the time it was supposed to be ready, I called them. The manager came on the phone and said, "We don't make grilled cheese anymore, so we canceled your order." They never bothered to inform me, so I ended up with 2 very hungry kids in the back seat. I never went there again and was gratified to see they went out of business a few months later. Story 5. My neighbor boycotts the only grocery store in town because one time another customer called her a bad name, and the 16-year-old cashier did not do anything about it. Story 6. There is a muesli brand in Germany called Seitenbacher. I refused to buy their products despite their amazing quality because during my first real job, I had to listen to the radio in the office, and their incredibly annoying commercials ran every 5 minutes. It was just the owner of the company repeating the name repeatedly. Just seeing that name irritates me to this day. Story 7. Anything from Best Buy has to do with a delivery of a washing machine that belonged to the landlord back in 2008. The frustration is strong. I can't even remember the issue, but I won't work with them ever again. Story 8. Before they went under, I boycotted Body Shop, a UK high street store, because I went into one of their locations, tried to buy a lip balm, and was told there was a minimum 3-item purchase. I didn't want anything else. I just wanted the lip balm. I know I could have bought 3 lip balms, but I didn't want to. This was a few years ago, and I'm still annoyed about it. It's possible that the rule existed only because it was an outlet store and not one of their regular locations. I'm still annoyed nonetheless. Story 9. I was 9 months pregnant and ordered a sub on their app. The order went through and I was charged. When I went to pick it up, the store was closed all day because it was a holiday. I returned the next day and was informed that they had no way of checking and I would need to come back when a manager was available, which was only from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Despite showing my receipt, they still had no record of my order. I called and emailed corporate but received no response. They have lost me as a customer for life, as that is the only power I have in this situation. Story 10. I just wanted to look at soap, but now 8 different employees have approached me, asking if I need help or trying to make conversation. Please go away. Story 11. I still don't buy Nabisco brand vanilla wafers because they moved their factory out of my neighborhood in the 1990s, and now I can't smell them baking for my backyard. I'll buy Oreos, though. Story 12. Not mine, but a boycott through association. Denny's once gave my wife only 1 sausage. I haven't eaten at any Denny's in over 15 years. Story 13. I went to Subway, but the person taking my order made fun of me for wanting a 6-inch sandwich instead of a foot-long. He made an inappropriate joke, and since I was already tired and hungover, I decided to leave and went to the nearby fast food restaurant instead. Story 14. Panera. Why is a half sandwich and a cup of soup now $20? They used to be my go-to affordable lunch, and you could get a pastry for $1 if you purchased a meal. Now it feels like overpriced airport food. Story 15. Sephora. A rude sales associate followed me around the store, which was very insulting. I will not shop there again. Story 16. I bought a computer for my wife, and 2 days later it went on sale. They still hadn't built it yet. I called and asked them to match the sale price or cancel the order, but they refused. The representative told me they had my money and there wasn't anything I could do about it. I told them I would make them lose 100 times what they had cost me, and I worked in information technology, so I would. A few years later, I was in a senior position with a company of over 850 staff. After I dropped Dell from an approved vendor list, the Dell representative reached out to me to have lunch. At lunch, I explained why. They then informed my boss and tried to have me fired. My boss called them unprofessional and said he would never buy another Dell product either. Later, I became part of a company that provided computers for over 5,000 employees across several organizations. Once again, Dell was no longer a choice. Over my career, I'm sure I cost them many times more than I had claimed. It may seem petty to some, but I believe they deserved it for their poor customer service. Story 17, Sears. In 1988, my husband and I tried to buy a dryer from Sears. We were young and financially struggling, so we applied for a credit card to finance the dryer. They scheduled us for delivery, but the dryer was never delivered. I called the salesman who sold us the dryer, and he informed me that we were not approved for the credit card, so we could not get the dryer. He was extremely rude and dismissive. We never purchased anything from Sears again, and I feel partially responsible for their decline. Story 18. There is a Peruvian chicken restaurant near where I used to live. They make good sandwiches, but 5 times in a row I went in and ordered one, and they told me they were out of bread. So I boycotted the restaurant for 10 years until we moved away. Story 19. Glamouflage is a line of opaque concealer from hard candy designed for covering tattoos and imperfections. It generally receives good reviews, but I cannot purchase it on principle due to the misspelling of the brand name. It is meant to be a portmanteau of glamour and camouflage, so the correct spelling should clearly be glamouflage. I do not understand how they do not realize this. Story 20. In 1966, a Chevron station in Wichita, Kansas, refused to let my dad use the restroom to change my diaper because he didn't need gas. Since then, no one in my family has used Chevron fuel. Story 21. Lululemon. I have been both overweight and underweight at different times in my life, but their attitude towards larger women means I will not buy their products, even if they fit me. Story 22. Manscaped. Their ads often have annoying timing and come across as manipulative with messages suggesting that women will think you are unattractive if you do not groom yourself with their products. Story 23. Any snack where the advertisements feature someone crunching and eating drives me up the wall. Story 24. 1. Domino's, because one time I ordered and it didn't show up even though it said it had. When I called, the representative was unhelpful and offered a refund as if it were my fault. I didn't want a refund. I wanted them to resend the pizza, but they wouldn't because they were too busy. Charmin, because those bears are so obsessed with toilet paper. Bears don't even need toilet paper. Why are they always shaking their backsides at each other? Why do they live in a house but wear no clothing? Story 25. Any product that advertises up to 100% of anything, protection, stain removal, odor control, hair color, could be as little as 1%. Story 26. Sony Corporation pursued a woman named Sony in Baltimore due to her naming her sandwich shop Sony's. She eventually ran out of money defending her name as Sony Corporation continued to appeal after losing. Story 27. Santander charged me £28 in overdraft fees when they misplaced a check I had paid in. I made appointments at 5 different branches and made sure to bring a leaking paint pot in my bag each time. It must have cost them at least £1,000 in carpet damage. Story 28. I tried to return a brand new Fitbit that wouldn't turn on 2 days after I bought it, along with the receipt and the box, which was bent. The manager refused the return. When I told him he couldn't refuse it because it met all the qualifications for a return, he dragged a pregnant teenager onto the floor, grabbed her by the arm and said, "See this girl? If you return that, I can't pay her." You're taking food out of her mouth. Best Buy. Not some small mom-and-pop store where it may hurt, but you'll get reimbursed in 60 days from Fitbit when you send it back. Best Buy. We were in the middle of renovating a house. For weeks later, I went in and asked to speak to him. I showed him the receipt for a washer, a dryer, a dishwasher, a refrigerator, 2 televisions, and a stereo system. It was my big mistake, huge moment. That was the last time I stepped into Best Buy. Story 29. Anything from Blizzard games. As a 90s kid, they went from being the favorites of the gaming industry to the favorites of shareholders. It has been an absolute fall from grace. Story 30. Bojangles. They did not give me a receipt at the drive-thru when I paid. Then, when I reached the next window, they gave me the wrong order, and I could not prove it was incorrect because I did not have a receipt. Story 31. Domino Sugar will never receive a dime from me because they damaged the sugarcane plantations here in Puerto Rico when the first governor was appointed to the island. They destroyed the existing sugarcane mills and exploited our land and people. Story 32. Tesla. I have these fixations on range, reliability, price, and durability. I feel guilty about it. Story 33. I can be petty. I boycott my local cooperative store because I once tried to buy a sandwich lunch deal for £3.50, and the woman at the till said that it was a premium lunch item and should be £5.50. I pointed out that it was on the shelf labeled as a main, not a premium main. Nothing on the packaging suggested it was a premium item. In fact, it explicitly stated main on the label. I now refuse to shop there. I go to Morrison's instead and get a worse sandwich for more money. Story 34. I had streamed on Twitch for several years, and they did not pay me according to the contract. Nor did they refund the supporters who contributed to my channel. They constantly commit fraud, and I have been struggling against them since 2019. Many individuals like myself feel victimized by financial abuse from a large corporation. The issue seems petty because it involves small amounts like $50 here and there, but it has been accumulating over time. Story 35. If I see an annoying advertisement for something, I will never purchase it again. I do not care what it is. I would give up my favorite foods or essential medication if it means they lose 1 cent for making those foolish commercials. Story 36. I do not eat Chick-fil-A because of the hate. I do not eat Jimmy John's because the owner trophy hunts. I do not eat Papa John's because the owner is disrespectful. Story 37. Just because my uncle kept talking about it at every family gathering. I haven't seen him in 20 years, and he still can't drive an Audi. Story 38. Shutterfly. I was going to order Christmas cards in 2020. And they were charging a $1 COVID fee. I was an essential worker and thought it was unfair of Shutterfly to charge that fee when a majority of their employees could work remotely. I haven't used their services since. Story 39. I once opened a can of Del Monte fruit cocktail, and it was missing the half cherry. After several strongly worded letters to the company with no satisfaction, I decided a full boycott was necessary. Story 40. Milani, the makeup brand, participated in a meme trend related to the Depp and Heard trial. I thought it was disgraceful to make a mockery of a domestic violence trial. It is unsettling for companies to use abuse allegations as social media content for profit. I no longer use Duolingo for the same reason. Story 41. Kroger was denied a purchase that they claimed would help competition, which actually furthered their monopoly. They also increased prices during COVID-19 to generate profit. Moreover, they admitted to doing so. Story 42. Once, about 35 years ago, I was seated in a booth at a Friendly's restaurant in New Hampshire with my wife. It took us about a minute to spot a booger wiped on the tabletop. We silently got up, walked out, and have never returned. Story 43. Maybe not petty, but the only place I boycott for personal reasons. My dad and I went to Tractor Supply to refill our propane bottles. The employee asked us to pull around behind a few nearby parking lots to get into their stockyard where the containers were. We did so, and while we were waiting for him, I realized the narrow alleyway my dad had backed into was littered with nails. I brought it up to the employee, and he just asked if my dad had run over one. He didn't, as far as we know. I explained to him that he could be causing a lot of flat tires with the alleyway littered with nails, to which he replied that the nails aren't ours. I asked if he would sweep them up the moment we left. He said, "If I have time. I never get angry at employees and make a scene for myself, even when they make mistakes and sometimes inconvenience me." However, I found myself asking him sarcastically if he would buy us new tires if we ended up having a flat, since he wasn't willing to do anything else to fix this immediate problem. That made him angry, and he started mentioning the law about how the nails didn't belong to them and it couldn't be proven they had thrown them out. Before we left, I even asked him for a broom so I could do it myself, but he wouldn't give me one. One unhelpful employee is enough for me to never want to go back there again. Story 44. McDonald's. When I was 7, I ordered a vanilla milkshake and received a strawberry one. I haven't returned since. Story 45. Victoria's Secret is too expensive and has too many catalogs. I'm not paying high prices for supermodels to sell their products. I bought one of their Body by Victoria bras, and it gave me a horrible rash. Never again. Story 46. I boycott Walmart. One night, I was shopping there and came out with a huge basket of groceries only to find that my car had been towed. This Walmart was near a sports stadium where people often left their cars and carpooled to the games. I parked far out in the lot because I had a nice car and didn't want door dings. However, someone must have assumed I left my car there for reasons other than shopping because it was towed by whoever was monitoring the lot. I had to call a family member to come across town, load my groceries into their car, and take me home to unload them. Then we had to drive 20 miles to Dallas to pay over $400 to retrieve my car from the tow lot. Before leaving the store that night, I spoke to management, and it was clear, based on my large load of groceries and the time I spent in the store, that I hadn't left my car parked for any reason other than shopping. The next day, I contacted their corporate office, but no one would provide a refund for the towing fees that resulted from their actions. I now understand where Walmart stands with regard to their customers. Story 47. I bought gas at Petro-Canada 25 years ago for $20.01. The owner made me break a $10 bill for the penny. I haven't been back since. Story 48. DoorDash. A long time ago, when I was going to deliver for them, I learned that if the customer tipped, the driver only received $1 for that trip because they considered the tip part of the payment. I believe they have changed this policy, but I still feel frustrated by it. Story 49. Not really petty, but David Chang's Mamafuka brand tried to intimidate Asian businesses from using the term chili crunch on their products. There is a lot of information available on this topic. Story 50. Mary Brown's Chicken, a Canadian fried chicken chain, required me to create an account with a third-party service to order online. I had to save my credit card information on that service. Consequently, I deleted my account because I do not trust a random e-commerce website to protect my information against data breaches. They stated that I cannot sign up again without a new email address and phone number. I could place an order for fried chicken over the phone, but I choose not to. Story 51. Fig Scrubs. They ran a commercial a couple of years ago featuring a female physician holding a Medicine for Dummies book upside down with a Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine badge. I am a female physician who is a doctor of osteopathic medicine, and they will never get my money. Story 52. J.C. Penney. 40 years ago, a man in customer service yelled at my mom and essentially called her a liar, which made her cry. They are not getting my money. Story 53. I used to work in a convenience store. The local Pepsi vendor was difficult to deal with. I have boycotted Pepsi for nearly 50 years. Story 54. Loom products appear frequently in advertisements while I'm eating. There are better ways to promote their products than having the CEO talk about her unpleasant body parts. Story 55. Not for a petty reason, but Walmart. I don't like that my taxes go to paying their employees' welfare while Walmart makes billions. Story 56. AutoZone. I went in years ago to get a fuse for my car. I was a young woman in my 20s. The employee kept telling me I was asking for the wrong size. He didn't look anything up. He just insisted that the fuse I requested was too big. I couldn't get a word in for almost a minute and a half. I was holding the fuse I needed to replace. When he realized that, he simply pointed toward the fuses and walked off. Thanks for the customer service. Story 57. Time magazine for leaving Elvis Presley off their list of 20th century top entertainers is absurd on its face. Story 58. Russian vodka. An American of Polish immigrants. It discusses events that happened in World War II and does not relate to Putin, although he certainly has an influence. Story 59. There is a particular cozy indie game that everyone loves. However, the company founder was rude to me at a party, so I refused to play it. I will not disclose which game it was. Story 60. In college, I had a job doing phone surveys. I didn't love it, but the pay was decent and the hours were somewhat flexible. A typical survey would last about 10 to 15 minutes. However, Capital One decided that their survey should consist of 70 questions and take about 40 minutes. This was, of course, against all advice from people in my company who saw how problematic it would be. Moreover, we couldn't take shortcuts and had to read all the text verbatim to the survey taker. And naturally, all these questions were extremely repetitive, with the nuances not explained. Over the course of about a month, only 5 people chose to complete the survey. The furthest anyone got was about 30 minutes before they gave up. I couldn't blame them. I was exhausted. In summary, I will never support Capital One because of this experience. Story 61. When I was in undergraduate school, I participated in what was supposed to be a hackathon sponsored by ServiceNow. They decided to turn it into a contest to see which team could optimize their platform the best. They wanted us to act like software engineers, although out of 40 people, only about 5 were in the software engineering program. Additionally, we had to explain our work, describe how we did it, and hand over documentation to the ServiceNow representatives. This occurred about 7 or 8 years ago, and I still feel frustrated about it. When I am in a senior position and building out infrastructure in the next few years, you can be sure that ServiceNow will never receive any of my budget. Story 62. Verizon did not fulfill a minor repair request. I ended all my contacts with them and will never work with them again. Story 63. 16 years ago, a major e-commerce site in my country misdelivered a package I was excited about. They sent it a month later to the wrong address with no explanation. I still refuse to purchase items from them. Story 64. Heinz baked beans do not stack in the cupboard, which is the main reason I stopped buying them. The fact that they are now watery means I won't go back. Story 65. I refused to buy Nestle after the CEO stated that all countries should simply grant them the water rights. Story 66. I boycott anything related to Kraft. I used to work at one of their factories. I quit my job under the assumption that I would have a decent position with them, because that's what they promised, only to find out they were going to make significant employment cuts and left me jobless within a couple of months. It's been 15 years, and I still dislike them. Story 67. Subway. The $5 footlong was the perfect price point for a long time. I refused to pay any more for them. Story 68. A local food place. I got lasagna for pickup. When ordering on the phone, she asked, "Do you want it warm?" I said no. Turns out she meant cooked. I was on a quick lunch break and had no way to cook lasagna. It's been over a decade, and I'm still upset. Story 69. Applebee's. When I was a kid, I vomited after eating their food, and my sister almost got sick too. Friendlies. My mom took me there after my first day of kindergarten. I went to the bathroom and she got up to check on me. When we returned to the table, it had been cleared. It's been 25 years, and she is still upset about it. Story 70. When I was very pregnant, Chipotle made my pickup order a burrito bowl with only meat and rice, and none of the toppings. I couldn't figure out how to complain because there was no option to call. This has happened to my friends as well. I'm just done with them. Story 71. I had a subpar laptop in college and have not purchased from that brand since. I avoid low-quality online retailers for this exact reason. The hyper-consumerism and casual tendency for people to buy substandard products from these places frustrates me. I had a negative experience at a restaurant associated with a celebrity chef. I visited there with my college friends for our annual dinner, and they failed to serve one of my friends' meals for a long time, requiring multiple reminders. Ultimately, they refused to offer any compensation and provided overall poor customer service. The restaurant eventually closed down. Story 72. I dislike that series of Chevrolet commercials featuring real people, not actors, to such an extent that when we last purchased a car, I refuse to consider any Chevrolet product. Story 73. Starbucks. I started when my typical drink went from $4.95 to $5.05. That 10 cents was just too high. That same drink is now around $6.35. Story 74. For the Back to the Future anniversary, they could have released a Pepsi Perfect theme for their cans or plastic bottles. Instead, they made it a limited edition collectible. Pepsi only released 6,500 bottles for $20.15, and scalpers acquired the majority instead of allowing the public to celebrate Back to the Future. Story 75. Apple bricked my 2008 Apple iPod Touch with an update. That was my smartphone at the time, and I never forgave them. Story 76. Dunkin' Donuts, specifically the one near my house. I was with a friend in their drive-thru, and we placed a simple coffee order. I asked for a large coffee with mocha flavoring, and she asked for a frozen vanilla coffee. We were sitting at the window for half an hour with no other customers in front or behind us, and when we received our order, they had the vanilla and mocha flavorings mixed up. We went back through and politely asked them to fix our order. They refused, claiming they made it as we ordered it, and that was that. Story 77. I was on a business trip in Chicago, at a customer site about 10 to 15 minutes from the airport. I finished my meetings 45 minutes before I needed to be at the airport. My company insisted on using Lyft, so I requested a ride. It was immediately accepted, and the app indicated the driver was 6 minutes away. After 10 minutes, I checked the app, and the driver was further away. 15 minutes, they hadn't moved. At 20 minutes, they still hadn't moved from what appeared to be a gas station. I messaged the driver, and they told me to cancel the trip if I wanted. I informed them that they needed to cancel if they weren't going to show up. They didn't respond for 5 minutes, so I said I would contact customer support. They canceled the ride. I submitted another ride request, which was immediately accepted by a different driver who was 3 minutes away. However, they started driving in the opposite direction. 5 minutes later, when they were now 8 minutes away and I needed to be at the airport in 10 minutes, a local taxi pulled up to drop someone off at the same customer building where I had been waiting for 40 minutes. I got in and told the driver, "2 Lyft drivers are about to make me miss my flight. Can you be a hero, even if it means breaking the speed limit?" He got me there in 9 minutes, and I tipped him $20 on a $15 fare. I was in the airport and through security before I remembered that I was supposedly still waiting for a Lyft. I checked the app, and the driver was still supposedly en route, but was showing as 20 minutes away from my pickup spot. So, I walked to my gate with a few minutes to spare before boarding and called customer support. I received the runaround, and they said they couldn't do anything until the ride was canceled but couldn't guarantee that I would get my money back. By then, the flight attendants were giving us the briefing, so I canceled the ride. Then I texted the chief financial officer to say that I no longer had confidence in Lyft's ability to provide reliable service for our employees and that I would share my experience with him the next day in the office. And that's how our 650-person company dropped Lyft as a vendor, even after their sales representative agreed to refund my cancellation charge when they called to ask why we were terminating the partnership. Story 78. I don't eat at Swiss Chalet because when I worked there, I received a 50% discount on chicken, but every night I had to throw away over 20 chickens straight into the dumpster. I was told I would be fired if I tried to give the food to homeless people or to myself. Story 79. I boycott all Coca-Cola products because of the new Coke fiasco in 1985. I was a Coca-Cola enthusiast before that, and it upset me greatly. I maintain that it was all done to cover the switch to high-fructose corn syrup. Story 80. My father-in-law doesn't like that Dyson closed down a factory years ago, or something like that. I don't even know the real reason. All I know is that any time I've considered buying a household vacuum, I'm not allowed to choose a Dyson. Story 81. I avoid fast food, including Burger King, due to their commercials. They can keep their products to themselves. Story 82. Weatherspoons in the UK. I appreciate their business model, but their owner supports Brexit and promotes its agenda. I avoid them whenever possible, even though it affects my finances. Story 83. I went to an interview for a management position at Gap. The interviewer was cold and unfriendly. I was working both a full-time and part-time job because I had just graduated from college. At the end of the interview, she said, "Have fun at one of your many jobs." If she had called back with an offer, I would have never accepted it. I have never walked into a Gap again since then. This was in the early 1990s. Story 84. I visited one of their showrooms when I was shopping for my first car at the age of 22. The salesperson wouldn't assist me unless he knew how much my father was willing to spend. I informed him that my father had nothing to do with it. I was purchasing a car with my own money. He didn't believe me and told me to return with my father. I will never buy a Volkswagen. Story 85. I went in to buy a Honda Element, but the sales representative wouldn't let me take a test drive without discussing financing first. He spoke to me as if I had walked into a luxury dealership asking about a high-end sports car, instead of a $24,000 utility vehicle. So I went across the street and bought a new Scion XB from the Toyota dealership. They never once asked me about payment until I expressed my interest in taking it home. I wrote a check, signed some papers, and drove over to the Honda dealership to wave. Unfortunately, he was already gone, so it wasn't as cool as I had hoped. In my mind, it felt thrilling, and I imagined he felt regret about it. Since then, I have purchased 7 new Toyotas from the same salesman at the same dealership and will never own a Honda. I will remain firm in this minor decision. Story 86. Papa John's. I am not a huge fan of chain pizza in general, but the CEO did not treat his employees well, especially when the Affordable Care Act was passed into law. If memory serves, he was voted out of his chairmanship due to his behavior. It is unfortunate when the company you founded no longer wants to associate with your negativity. Story 87. I dislike Jeff Bezos and believe he has enough money for multiple lifetimes. He does not need my financial support. Hey Jeff, could you do something for us? Buy the rights to A Charlie Brown Christmas from Apple and make it available on free television every year. Story 88. Foot Locker was where the salesman made fun of me for wanting a Flyers starter jacket in North Jersey. That was about 30 years ago. Story 89. Most things that have unnecessary Harry Potter branding or partnerships lose my interest. I looked at that Sasquatch soap once and saw they had a Harry Potter partnership, so I will never try their brand. Those little knitting kits looked cute and I considered trying one, but when they adopted Harry Potter branding, I lost interest in their entire company. It's not overly petty, but I believe the added degrees of separation contribute to that feeling. Story 90. In 2013, Barilla stated that they would not feature LGBT families in their advertisements because they believed they had the right to market their product as they choose. As a result, I decided to exercise my right to purchase the pasta I prefer. Although we used to enjoy Barilla products, we have been boycotting them. To me, this choice does not feel petty, although others may find it trivial or unimportant. Story 91. Nike chose Michael Vick as a spokesperson despite his history of dogfighting and animal abuse. Story 92. I have not knowingly purchased a Hanes product since the 1980s commercial for Underalls, a pantyhose that advertised, "They make me look like I'm not wearing anything." The poor English sounded unrefined. No, I'm not an English teacher. Story 93. U.S. products. As a Dane, it's not hard. Only Colgate toothpaste so far. Edit. Not petty, but consider the perspective you are viewing it from. Story 94. Chipotle did not hire one of my college friends because he did not resemble their customers. Their customers are intoxicated college preparatory students with significant amounts of wealth. Story 95. Spence Diamonds. Anyone in the Greater Toronto area knows their advertisements are on every radio station. Their entire strategy is to be annoying so their name sticks in your head. It worked, But the association is so negative that I can only assume anyone remotely associated with Spence is not reputable, and I would never do business with them. Story 96. I genuinely refuse to eat at Chick-fil-A due to their support of anti-LGBT initiatives. However, that was years ago, and I'm still uncertain if that is still the case. Regardless, I find their sandwiches oddly underseasoned. Story 97. There is a food truck that sells boba tea in our neighborhood. Everyone loves the owner, who also lives nearby. He sometimes sets up shop in a local strip mall with the property owner's permission. Then a boba tea shop opened in the mall, and with the property owner's support, forced him out. We no longer patronize that place. Story 98. Walmart makes me feel like a criminal every time I go in. I once had some toothpaste and, without a receipt, an employee decided I was a problem with my single tube of toothpaste. She marched me back to self-checkout to reprint the receipt and check it, while people walked in and out without being stopped. I try not to focus on race, but it's hard not to consider that it was a contributing factor to why I was treated poorly. Guitar Center is another place where I felt disrespected. I went to get an amplifier when I was 17, and they treated me like I was incompetent, even though I had been playing for years at that point. Story 99. Who steals from a museum like villains in Indiana Jones? Hobby Lobby. So steal from them. Story 100. HelloFresh is a food delivery company. Around 7:30 in the evening, I was trying to settle my baby to sleep. She was just nodding off when someone started knocking loudly on the front door, which jolted her awake. I went to answer the door and found two sales representatives for HelloFresh, one male and one female, both around 20 years of age. They asked how I was doing, and I replied that I wasn't very happy as I was trying to settle my daughter, and they had just woken her up by banging so loudly on the door at that hour. I said I wasn't interested in anything they were selling, and as I went to close the door, I heard the female call me a rude name. I lost my temper and told them both in a stern manner that if they didn't leave my property immediately, I would remove them and they wouldn't be in a position to bother anyone else that night. Story 101. Charmin, the toilet paper brand, has commercials that I find problematic. They seem to normalize inappropriate behaviors. The cartoon bears often appear overly enthusiastic about using the product. It feels excessive. Story 102. Cracker Barrel. I'm black and always got a sketchy vibe from that place, even as a kid. I think they have a telling past as well. The food is good, though. Story 103. I ordered the Linda's fudge cake to go after a subpar meal. When I bit into it, I was unexpectedly greeted by a peanut butter cheesecake. I dislike peanut butter and cheesecake. I wrote to their corporate office and did not receive an apology. Story 104. Electronic Arts for killing the vastly superior NFL 2K franchise by taking and holding the exclusive NFL video game license for all these years. Football video games have never evolved, and Madden has remained the same poor quality every year for 20 years. Story 105. Home Depot. I had a large project that I planned out very carefully. With my spreadsheet, it indicated that my total would be approximately $5,870.21, and it was. However, my online cart showed that Pro Extra saved me $20, though I don't remember the exact amount. I finally realized they added $20 to my total and then removed it to claim I saved money. I canceled my order and went to McCoy's, where my totals aligned perfectly as expected. Now, I actively avoid Home Depot as much as possible. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.